A scatterplot is a kind of graph that's used to display bivariate data. And we've discussed what bivariate data is before. It is data that is collected from two different sources about a single observation. So each point here represents one observation that contains two values. That is the definition of bivariate data. And each observation is going to become a point on a graph. So if we're going to graph this, the first thing that we have to do is to set up a scatterplot. So the steps to set up a scatterplot are pretty straightforward. The first thing that we have to do is we have to draw our axes. We're going to draw a horizontal axis, and that's going to be our x-axis. The horizontal axis is the one that goes from left to right. So we're going to do a horizontal axis, and then we're going to go ahead and label that as the x, and then we're going to do a vertical axis. That is going to be our y-axis. We've also talked a little bit about our independent and dependent variables. Our independent variable is the x-axis, and the dependent variable goes on the y-axis. In the example I showed on the first slide, we were talking about the number of hours that someone studies and their score on a test. So in that example, the independent variable was hours studied, and the dependent variable was the test score. And so hours studied is going to go on the x-axis, and the test score is going to go on the y-axis. So once we have this done, the next thing that we want to do is plot our points. And so let's talk very quickly about how to plot points. And let's say I wanted to plot the point 268. Each pair of values is written as an ordered pair. And it's called an ordered pair because it is in order of x and then y. So 268 has an x value of 2 and a y value of 68. So in order to plot this point, I move to 2 on the x-axis, and then I move to 68 on the y-axis. So starting at the origin, I move over two spots or over two spaces, and then up 68 spaces on the y-axis, and that is where I'm going to plot the point. So the point goes at the ordered pair 268, which has an x-coordinate of 2 and a y-coordinate of 68. So if we return to our data of hours studied and test score, and I wanted to plot all 4 of these points, the first thing that I would do is I would convert my data from a table into coordinates. So the first observation was 1 hour studied has a test score of 62. That would be the ordered pair 1, 62. Hours studied having a test score of 68 would be the ordered pair 2, 68, and so on. Once I have those observations written as coordinates, the next thing that I'm going to do is draw my x-axis and my y-axis. I'm going to label those with my independent and dependent variables, which were hours studied and test score. And then I'm going to plot these coordinates one at a time. So the first coordinate was 162, so an x-coordinate of 1 and a y-coordinate of 62. Next will be 268, then 374, and finally 482. And I don't have to label these points, but since I don't have the x and y axes scaled, meaning I don't have the marks on the x and y axis telling me exactly where the 1, 2, 3, and 4 are, I might find it helpful to label each one of these points. And one of the benefits of a scatter plot is that whenever I look at these points, I can see that as the scores are increasing, study time also increases. So the more hours a person studies, the higher their test score becomes. One of the things that we need to know how to do is to describe patterns in a scatter plot. And the real benefit of a scatter plot is that scatter plots help display bivariate data and look for patterns or relationships. And they can help us describe patterns such as values increasing, values decreasing, times when there's not really a clear pattern at all, And we're going to study a lot of these patterns more in the next lesson. For right now, we're just going to focus on constructing scatter plots and then describing what we see in those scatter plots. So, what did we learn from this lesson? We learned that a scatter plot is a display of bivariate data. Each pair of values in our two-column table becomes a point. The independent variable is the value that we put on the x-axis, and the dependent variable is the value that we put on the y-axis. In the next lesson, we're going to classify patterns as positive, negative, nonlinear, or patterns that have no association at all.